This is going to be an unboxing video for the Skywalker Precision Roaster. It's a 500 gram all electric drum roaster. A lot of you guys are probably already going to be familiar with this, and that's why you're going to watch this video. So we're going to do an unboxing. This is the second one I've bought, and so I'm pretty familiar with how they work, what they're good at, and what they're not good at, but just wanted to take you guys through a quick walkthrough of what you're going to get out of the box. This one was purchased on Amazon recently for Amazon Prime Day. They're right at about 500 bucks, give or take 20 bucks. So let's open it up, see what's inside of it. So you can see it comes in a decently large box, but the overall form factor of this machine is super small. It's made to be used on a countertop, tabletop. You got your basic instructions in here. Let's see. Thank you for choosing Skywalker. Enjoy fresh. Enjoy home coffee roasting. The Skywalker all-electric coffee roaster. This is the alpha. I don't know exactly what that means. Digital profiles, direct fire, imitating, 100% electric. Obviously, this machine was made in China. They're all made in the same factory. I think it starts with an A. I can't remember which one. And then they're kind of white labeled as different roasters, but they all basically come from the same place. The only difference you're going to see is some of them come with different accessories just to kind of have like a unique selling point. So let's get this open here. Right. So they are packed pretty well. Like I said, this is the second one I've gotten. Okay, so this one, my original Skywalker roaster did not come with. This is like an Amazon exclusive, some kind of a additional exhaust fan. I'm assuming is to pull additional smoke out. Not sure exactly why you would need that. I will probably discard that. Maybe if you were roasting in your home or we're trying to roast through a window or something like that. I'm in my garage right now, and then I just open up the large garage door and can vent it all out that way. Let's see what we got here. And this looks like just the power controller for, I'm assuming, this guy here. Yeah, because this was definitely not part of the other one that I've purchased in the past. I will say I purchased one in the past, and the heat element inside of it, the filament, broke down on me after about, I don't know, maybe 50 to 75 pounds of coffee being put through it. Maybe actually I would say 50 to 75 different roasts over time. These are the exhaust tubes. I'm not even going to open them up because, frankly, I'm not going to use them. Like I said, I'm roasting in my garage, but that's an exhaust tube that just kind of connects onto the top here of the roaster itself. So let's get this big guy out. All right, so you can see here, initial impressions. It's called the Skywalker for a reason. I don't think because it's reminiscent of Skywalker from Star Wars, but it is a very Star Wars-esque, actually probably a little bit more like Darth Vader, or depending on how you look at it, some of these angles actually kind of remind you of the Tesla Cybertruck. But let's get this up and over for just a minute here, and then we'll look at some of these other accessories. Let's see, what else do we have in this box? Just another one of the exhaust tubes. So I'm going to put that back in there. And then this guy as well. This is another, to be frank, it's pretty useless. This is a filter that sits up on top of the roaster. In fact, let's show you guys how that works here real quick. Get rid of that. So we'll bring the roaster back into sight here. So as I said, this roaster just uses a standard 110 receptacle, 110 power. And this guy, I'm not even going to open it up, but basically just plugs in USB-C, sits right on top of there. It's supposed to act as a smoke suppression device, smoke reducer. They clearly state in their own instructions, but it's really only good for light, like ultra light roast, anything that the beans aren't really smoking. Once they even hit first crack, they start to smoke a lot. and I found it to be pretty much useless. I'm pretty sure it's a cabin filter. To be honest, it looks like a cabin filter from a. I have a Honda Insight that it looks like it's from, and it doesn't really do a lot. So I'm just going to set it aside. In fact, what I did with mine was I took this little filter guard off of here and just let it vent out the smoke naturally as it would. All right, so let's go through some of the accessories here. As you can see, this is the bean chute. This is where you would drop the beans in after the machine is preheated and when you're ready to roast. Over here is the chaff collector. Initial impressions on these, the metal is actually not super thin on these machines. They're a little bit more robust than I expected it to be. That's all subjective to what your expectations are and what you were thinking when you were going to get a $500 roaster. A lot of you guys that are going to be coming to this roaster are going to be coming off of a fresh roast or a coffee popper, popcorn popper, things like that. This is definitely a step up from that. The chute collector is pretty nice, actually. I will say, as a pro tip, I'm not sure if you can see that there, but as a pro tip, when you're roasting, you want to make sure that this is you're not leaving any gap here, because that will pull the vacuums inside of this machine, or excuse me, the fans inside of this machine create a little bit of a vacuum. And so if you have that open just a little bit, it'll actually keep the machine running much cooler. The roast itself running much cooler, and ultimately take a long time to roast the beans and end up baking them. I had one roast that I was doing back to back, and it was just like a medium roast on some Guatemalan beans, some natural processed Guatemalan beans, and that roast ended up taking, just on their automatic control, I think I was roasting it on the 022 setting. It ended up taking like 25 minutes, and I couldn't figure it out because I was like sitting on the other side of the machine, and then I finally figured it out. And the machine was the heater was running at, the heat lamp was running at like 80%, but the machine was only at like 285 degrees. So ultimately, keeping that closed is going to get you up to your temps a lot quicker, so you can get that roast done in the optimal time. So that, the chute here, this is where your sample spoon goes. This is where they keep a bunch of the accessories. You can open these up, take a look at them. That's a little stirring spoon. I don't know what else you would use that for besides stirring the beans when they're in their cooling process. This actually came in really handy for me. I'd actually probably recommend getting something else from to have as a backup as well, but just cleaning the machine, cleaning the drum ring here, cleaning out some of the fans. Obviously, you don't want to do that when it's on, because these are just like little nylon bristles and they will melt. This coffee scoop was actually pretty handy for me, just to even stir the beans as they're cooling as well, and pulling out green coffee out of a bag. This is just the chute cover that keeps it nice and toasty in there. Like I said before, for the same reason you wouldn't want the chaff drawer open, you don't want the chute cover off, because your beans will stay pretty cold and not cook in adequate time. This is just a little sample. I think they call these a sample spoon, something like that. But this basically just sits in there, and then it kind of screws and locks in there. You want to leave that in there, obviously, as well the whole time, unless you're actually doing a little sample. Down here you have the controller, and it's kind of cool. It has a little cheat sheet on the back. If you're interested in just roasting with their automatic profiles, it gives you a little bit of a cheat sheet. Natural, washed. Natural would be dry, washed would be your wet. And then these are going to be kind of your one-off or specialties, honey, processed, that kind of thing. And then light, medium, dark, it's associated with each roast profile. And this basically just plugs in right over on the side. This is like an older style USB, not USB-C. I think they're called USB 2 or USB-A, USB-B, something like that. That kind of just plugs right back into the side here, hopefully. Yeah, there we go. It's just a bit of a tight fit. It's got a little kickstand on it. Just keep it right next to the machine, not too close, because obviously this machine does get pretty hot on the outside. In fact, when I'm roasting, I keep a fan on it, just to kind of pull some of the heat away from it. There's other ways that people hack these and kind of modify them. They'll cut a little vent in the back here, because these vents is where most of the electronics sit back behind here. They'll cut another hole in here and either just leave it open with a grill or something like that, or they'll throw in another fan, which can be useful. I never had a problem with the machine overheating, but I kept a big like window fan on it pretty constantly. So down here you can see this is the bean drop tray, the cooling tray. I didn't find a lot of use for it. You have to use it unless you actually take this whole thing out and then you're dropping the beans into something else. But it was nice to kind of get the initial drop of the beans into here. And so how that works is this down here. Probably can't see it very well, but I'll see if I can show you anyway. Down here is the little viewing window. You can actually see the beans turning in there on the drum, as well as this is the little drop door to drop the beans out. It has a little hinge on it and it locks as well. What you do want to make sure is that you don't ever open that door during a roast when beans are in there, because you won't be able to adequately close it again afterwards, or you're gonna get a bean caught between this door here and the drum itself, and then potentially seize up the drum or cause it to overwork by crushing a bean in there. So you want to make sure you always leave that closed unless you're done with the roast and you're actually ready to drop the beans. Yeah, so that's kind of the gist of how the Skywalker roaster works. We can get it plugged in here and I can show you what it looks like. I do have it plugged in on a dedicated 20 amp circuit. It doesn't take anywhere near 20 amps, but just to be safe, I threw it on a circuit that is dedicated, so it's not. I also have a big chest freezer plugged in my garage here, and I definitely don't want to pop the breaker on that. So when it starts up, it doesn't actually really do anything besides you hear that beep. And then from there, when you're ready to roast, and I would definitely recommend pre-seasoning this roaster, burn off some of the oils from the factory, some of the greases, that kind of thing. Even just lubricate all the things. These have been sitting in transport for probably no less than months at a time. As well as you want to fire this thing up, get it hot, make sure it's working correctly before you go and you put in your expensive beans. So from here, you would just turn it on, hold this power button on off. And then let's say you have a wet process Guatemalan you're roasting for espresso. Probably you're going to be wanting to do a medium roast or something like that. And if you look at the little cheat sheet on the back here, a medium roast washed wet process is going to be a 022 automatic profile. So in order to choose your profile, you just come over here and you click this button. P is for profile. It does a couple other things as well, but just tap it until you see 022. And then from there, you're going to double tap preheat. And you can see the machine start to fire up. You can see inside of here. Let's make sure you guys can see that. Inside of here, this heating element is now lit up, starting to put off heat already. I can feel that. And then once you drop beans in, what I've found is that the machine automatically will get to the preheat temp, and then it'll start beeping. It'll keep that preheat temp for about, I think, 10 or 15 minutes. And then if you don't drop beans in there or turn it into roasting mode, it will automatically turn itself back off. I have heard some pro tips from some people of not keeping the heating power up to 100 because it burns out the heating elements even faster. I believe it's a halogen heat lamp in here. I could be wrong on that. And then what I've seen is this will get up to about 400 degrees or so Fahrenheit for a medium, maybe 390, 395. And then when you drop the beans, I usually roast about 400 grams at a time. Sometimes I'll push it up to 450, 475, even all the way up to like 490. Excuse me, actually I don't. I'm thinking ounces right now. Sometimes I'll do about 14 and a half ounces, or all the way up to about, if I'm doing a really dark roast, I'll do like 14.9 ounces, somewhere around there. That'll get me about a 12-ounce bag, a little over actually. When I'm roasting, I usually just want to overcompensate the amount of coffee that I'm putting in a bag. I'd rather not shortchange it and then have to re-roast a whole nother batch just to add another half an ounce or something. So I usually roast around 14.5 to 14.9 ounces, and depending on the roast level, the moisture that's roasted out of the beans, I usually end up with about 12.5 to 13 ounces or so. All right, and then so once you're ready to drop the beans in, I use these from Sweet Maria's, just these little one-way cans, off-gassing cans, degassers. They're super cheap, super affordable. I bought like a few of them at a time. I think they're only like $5 or $6. They're fantastic. And then I pre-batch the coffee in one of these on my scale, and then you simply just drop it in here. And most of the time, it will, obviously, when it's preheating, you want it, even while it's preheating, you want this door closed. And I always like to have it in Fahrenheit as well, so I can see. I'm in the U.S., so I like to have things in Fahrenheit. It's just easier for me. Once it's done preheating, it will make that little beeping sound. Then I go and drop the beans in. Most of the time when you drop the beans in, it will actually automatically switch over to roast, and then start the timer, adjust the profile, the power down, the fan up. These are all for the automatic profiles, which I would recommend just starting out with, unless you're like a seasoned roaster, which if you are, you might not be roasting on one of these anyways. You're probably going to have a commercial roaster. But if not, definitely start out with the automatic roasts, the automatic profiles right here. And then, yeah, basically it'll just roast. And then once it's done roasting, or I should say too, sometimes it won't automatically kick over to roasting mode, and you have to put it in roasting mode. Just tap that, and then you can see it starts the timer, adjust the power down, adjust the fan up. I don't know if you can catch it here too, but one of the reasons why you want to like pre-season these roasters is because this is putting off smoke right now, and there's nothing even in it. So it's obviously burning off something, probably oils, greases, chemicals, things like that. I want to start with a seasoned drum, a seasoned roaster as best I can, so I'm not picking up any of those flavors in my coffee beans. And then once it's done going through the roast profile, it's really looking for a certain temperature. It's not any really much more intuitive than that. It's looking for the temp to get to a certain spot. And then it'll beep twice at you. It'll turn off the power. It'll turn the fan up to, I think it's 100%, and maybe a little bit less than that, 80 or 90. And it'll go into cooling mode, where a fan will start pulling cool air from down here in the cooling tray. And that kind of looks like that. Basically, you have to be able to turn that roast off in order for it to do that. But yeah, so that's the gist of it. These are really awesome machines. Like I said, I think they're pretty robust if you take care of them. I've heard definitely some of the pro tips are not using the filter. Oftentimes people are cutting a hole in the back to keep the electronics a little bit cooler. I keep a fan on it, as well as giving it a little bit of rest, time to cool down between roast. Production roasting, back-to-back roasting is really not what this machine is made for. As well as making sure that you're cleaning out the chaff tray between every roast, because it does fill up pretty quick, and it tends to like load the chaff in the back of that tray, and it gets really close to that drum. So I never had a fire in one of these, but I have definitely, I wouldn't even say gotten close, but I've gotten concerned a couple of times. You can see that it's now gotten up to temperature, so it's turned itself off, thinking that the roast is actually done only a minute into it. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. I will try and answer them. Hopefully there will be other Skywalker roasters in the comments here that can help as well. I'm definitely not the expert on these machines, but I did want to give everybody a look. If you're on the fence about getting one of these, and especially if you're roasting at home, in the garage, and you're roasting maybe a pound or two a week, these are really, really great and really efficient for that. And they can be modified, they can be hacked. You can hook up artisan to it, you can hook up high beam to it. It has a lot of really cool little things that you can do. They're very customizable, really fun to play around with, but can be used, they're very user friendly right out of the box. You don't have to be an expert roaster, commercial roaster, anything like that to use one of these. Their automatic modes are pretty decently robust right out of the bat. So thank you guys for listening. We'll see you again in the next one.